Story 1. The graveyard shift in Redwood County is a special kind of quiet. Most nights, the only sounds are the hum of the engine in my cruiser and the crackle of the radio. Dispatch calling out fender benders or noise complaints. My partner, Dave, used to say you could hear the trees growing out here. After the Abernathy call, I couldn't stand the silence. It started as a 1046, a welfare check. An elderly woman named Mrs. Gable called, worried about her neighbors. Said she'd been hearing odd noises from their house for 2 nights straight. Not shouting or fighting, she was specific about that. "It sounds like a conversation," she'd told the dispatcher, "but all the words are wrong." We rolled up to the Abernathy place around 0200. It was a modest ranch house at the end of a long gravel driveway, swallowed by a thicket of pine trees. All the lights were off. Dave killed the engine, and the sudden quiet was heavy, thick with the smell of damp earth. "Probably just a TV left on," Dave muttered, grabbing his mag light. We did a perimeter check. All windows and doors were secure, no signs of forced entry. I put my ear to the living room window, straining to hear something, anything. For a moment there was nothing but the thrum of my own pulse. Then, I heard it. It was faint, a low murmur from within. It did sound like a voice, but Mrs. Gable was right. It was wrong. It had the cadence of speech, the rise and fall of a sentence. But there were no discernible words. It was like listening to a radio tuned just shy of a station, catching the ghost of a broadcast. The sound would almost form a word, then dissolve into a static-laced hum. "Hear that?" I whispered to Dave. He listened for a moment, his brow furrowed. "Hear what? A fridge buzzing?" "No, it's a voice." He pressed his ear against the glass, then shrugged. "Nothing, Miller." "Let's knock." We gave the front door a solid rap. "Redwood County Sheriff's Office. Anyone home?" I called out. The murmuring inside stopped. The silence that followed was colder, more absolute than before. We waited, knocked again. Nothing. With no exigent circumstances, we couldn't force entry. We cleared the scene, told dispatch we'd follow up in the morning, and left a note on the door. I told myself it was a faulty television, an old radio playing tricks in the night. But the sound of it, that almost human garble, scratched at the back of my mind for the rest of the shift. A week later, we were called back. This time, it was a missing persons report filed by the Abernathy's son from out of state. He hadn't heard from them in days. The house was just as we'd left it, my note still tucked in the doorframe. This time, we had cause to enter. The air inside was stale and still. The place was immaculate, but frozen in time. A half-finished game of solitaire lay on the coffee table. 2 glasses of water sat on the nightstands, collecting dust. In the kitchen, a pot of hardened stew sat on the stove, a skin of mold growing over it. They had simply vanished mid-routine. We searched the house, room by room. Dave was in the master bedroom, and I was checking the spare room at the end of the hall. That's when I heard it again, clearer this time. It came from the closet in front of me. "Hello?" It was a perfect imitation of Dave's voice, right down to the slight rasp from his smoker's cough. But Dave was in the other room. My blood ran cold. I drew my sidearm, my heart hammering against my ribs. "Dave?" I called out, my own voice tight. "Yeah?" His real voice replied from the bedroom. "Find something?" The voice from the closet spoke again, a soft whisper. "Miller. In here." It was my own voice, a flawless, chilling echo of me. I felt a wave of nausea, a primal fear that had nothing to do with facing a man with a gun. This was different. This was wrong. I flung the closet door open. It was empty, save for a few moth-eaten coats and a shoebox. I stumbled back into the hallway, my light trembling. "We're clearing out," I said to Dave, my voice shaky. "Now." He saw the look on my face and didn't argue. We never found the Abernathys. The official theory was that they'd left on an impromptu trip, Or perhaps something more sinister had happened on the road. The case went cold. But I know what happened. I know they opened their closet door. I know they followed a familiar voice into the basement. I know they heard their own whispered name in the dark and went to investigate. I transferred out of Redwood County 6 months later. I couldn't handle the patrols anymore. Every rustle in the woods, every staticky voice over the radio made my skin crawl. Sometimes, when I'm alone in the dead of night, I'll hear it. A phantom sound. The whisper of my wife calling my name from an empty room, or my partner's voice on a silent radio. It's a hunter. Not one of flesh and blood, but one of sound. It listens, it learns, and it lures you into the quiet places where no one can hear you scream. The worst part isn't the silence anymore. It's hearing a voice you trust, and knowing, with absolute certainty, that you're the only one there. Story 2. The graveyard shift has a way of sanding you down. The city sleeps, but its nightmares don't, and you're the one who has to answer the phone when they call. Most nights, it's the usual parade of domestics, drunks, and dumb kids. You get used to the rhythm, the static-laced chatter from dispatch becoming a kind of bleak lullaby. But some calls stick. They burrow into the quiet moments and fester. The Gable call was one of those. It came in around 2:30. Dispatch sounded hesitant, which was the first red flag. Car 14, we have a wellness check at 817 Sycamore Lane. Elderly female caller, reporting. A voice in her backyard. My partner, Kowalski, grunted from the passenger seat. A voice? Let me guess, telling her to burn things? Negative, dispatch crackled back. She says it's a child. Crying. Says it's been going for an hour. That changed the temperature in the car. A kid, outside, in the dead of a damp October night. We were there in 3 minutes. Sycamore Lane was one of those streets that time forgot. Small, tidy houses with manicured lawns, all sleeping under the dull orange glow of sodium lamps. Number 817 was dark except for a single flickering light in a front window. An old woman, Mrs. Gable, opened the door before we even knocked. She was a bird-like creature, swallowed by a thick housecoat, her face a road map of worry. "Thank you for coming," she whispered, her voice trembling. "It's out back. It's been trying to get in the cellar door." "Ma'am, did you see anyone?" I asked, my hand resting on my sidearm. She shook her head, her eyes wide and glassy. "No, I only hear it. It sounds so wrong." Kowalski stayed with her while I went around the side of the house. The backyard was a postage stamp of wet grass, surrounded by a sagging wooden fence. A single bare-limbed oak tree stood like a skeleton in the middle. The air was thick and cold. I swept my flashlight beam across the yard. Patio furniture covered in a tarp, a rusted bird bath, a small tool shed. Nothing. Then I heard it. It was the sound of a baby crying. A desolate, piercing wail that scraped at the primitive part of your brain that screams, "Protect the young." I felt the hair on my arms stand up. The sound wasn't coming from any particular direction. It seemed to hang in the air, a sour note in the night silence. I keyed my radio. "Dispatch, I have the sound." Can't confirm a visual. Kowalski came out the back door, his mag light cutting a second beam through the dark. "Hear that? Jeez." We started a proper search. The cellar door was a heavy wooden slant against the foundation. There were scratch marks on it, but they looked old. We checked the shed, behind the overgrown bushes lining the fence. Nothing. The crying continued, a miserable looping sound. It didn't change in pitch or intensity. It was just a constant, awful sob. "It sounds like a recording," Kowalski said, his voice low. "Some sick prank." It was the most logical explanation. We were about to call it in as unfounded when the crying stopped. The sudden silence was more jarring than the noise itself. We both stood frozen, listening to the drip of water from the oak's branches. Then, A new sound started. A soft, wet clicking. It came from the dense shadows under the oak tree. "Police!" I shouted, my light fixed on the spot. "Show yourself!" The clicking stopped. A voice, thin and reedy, drifted from the darkness. "Show yourself." It was my own voice. A perfect hollow echo. My blood went arctic. Kowalski took a half step back, his hand now on his own weapon. "What the hell was that?" he breathed. "Police!" I repeated, my voice cracking this time. "What the hell was that?" the voice mimicked, this time in Kowalski's exact gravelly tone. It was flawless. The cadence, the accent, everything. But it was flat, devoid of life, like a parrot taught to speak by a corpse. We didn't move. We couldn't. Every cop instinct was screaming at me, but they were all the wrong ones. This wasn't a man with a gun. This wasn't a situation you de-escalate. This was something else. The fear was primal, a deep cellular dread that told me we were prey. From the deepest part of the shadow under the tree, something shifted. It wasn't a person. It was too low to the ground, too fluid. My light caught a glimpse of pale, elongated limbs unfolding, like a spider made of wet clay. It was a brief, impossible sight that my brain refused to properly assemble. The thing made a sound then, a horrible amalgamation of the baby's cry, my own voice, and Kowalski's, all mangled together into a wet, choking laugh. We ran. We didn't say a word. We just backed away, got Mrs. Gable, and put her in our cruiser. We never took our eyes off that backyard. We filed the report as a suspected trespass, possibly an animal in distress. We mentioned a prankster with a speaker. There are no boxes to check on a form for a thing that steals voices. There's no penal code for something that wears the night like a second skin. I drive past Sycamore Lane sometimes, always in the daylight. I can't help it. The house is empty now. Mrs. Gable went to live with her daughter in another state. But I still look at that skeletal oak tree in the backyard. And sometimes, when the radio is quiet and the city is asleep, I can almost hear it. A baby crying. Or my own voice, calling my name from a darkness I never want to see again.